All right, well, thank you very much, and I'd like to introduce Jacob Hickey. He is our Public Relations and Distribution Managers, and we don't have a clicker today, so he's my clicker over there. Because as I talk, I like to roam around a little bit, and it's hard for me to stay behind the podium. So we're very honored to be here and share with you guys and gals. I am a LEAD 24 graduate, and to my mentor, Alan Blazek back there, congratulations on your award as well. We are very humbled to be recognized by the U.S. dairy industry and the government for our efforts around sustainability. One of those efforts that set us apart was the fact that we brought together a number of family farms to continue on our dairy operations, which in our mind is the ultimate in sustainability, as keeping the family farms together and keeping them going for the next generation. And we're very proud to do that, and that's where I'll start our presentation about PrairieLand. As many of you probably know, we are 4 family farms that joined our cows to one location, and we're now milking 1,600 cows in Firth, Nebraska, and those are the principal owners and families that are involved at PrairieLand. So, go ahead. So, about myself, my passion is developing the future of the dairy business, of the dairy industry. It's changing quite rapidly, and we have to change with it. We're looking at our business plan, our business model. Our business model has been to buy all of our feed, and that business model has not worked in the last 2 years. So we're looking to changing that. We're looking to change a lot of things. And one of the things that I was fortunate enough to be in a Gallup entrepreneurship training a few years ago that was sponsored by the state of Nebraska. And I was very fortunate to do that because I found out what I was really, my strengths were and what my team's strengths were, and surrounded myself with a great group of guys who are the real driving force behind PrairieLand Dairy and what our vision is. Okay, and so my strengths are futuristic ideas and connectiveness, and you will hear, I'll talk a lot about the future in my opinion today of what agriculture is and where we're going as PrairieLand. Feel free to ask questions, because I'm going to bring up probably a lot of topics that you will not agree with, and that's just fine. But we look at it from the standpoint of how can PrairieLand fit into the next generation and how they can meet the needs of the consumer. So, go on. Okay, this is Jacob's wife, my daughter, and she manages our cows. It's a picture if you look close. She's ultrasounding our cows. So she does all of our ultrasound work, all of our vet work, and so I've learned that the next generation is a whole lot smarter on this stuff than I am, and I have to surround myself with them to learn more about all the technologies that they use, because here's how I did it when I was doing it. Okay, so they got it figured out a little bit better and more efficient than what my generation did, but we both got to the same end result, but I got a little dirtier. So, okay, all right, enough of that. So what we look at as PrairieLand is our management team looks at what we have, and we have cows. They produce milk, of course, meat, and my favorite is the manure, okay? It's our goal that we're going to market all 3 of these to the best of our ability in one fashion or another. And as we go through here, we'll talk about how we're marketing those and how we're trying to meet consumer demand with those. So, okay, because of those 3 things, we actually are set up 2 sister companies. We have PrairieLand Gold, which processes all of our manure, and PrairieLand Foods, we are currently processing fluid milk, ice cream, and cream. And we'll go into some of those in a little bit more detail. But those are the 3 companies that we currently run. They're all LLCs, all have the same ownership, mainly split up for liability reasons. Okay. So we look at our consumer and what they're demanding today. And to coin a phrase, it's smart food is what they're demanding, safe, measurable, appetizing, researched, and traceable. Our consumers are more engaged today in our process than ever before, and my generation has done a terrible job, in my opinion, of engaging them and educating them about producing milk or whatever, meat or whatever we're doing. What we've done in my generation is produce a really good product and sell it to a co-op, and they market it in the dairy business. We have not connected with the end consumer. And I know Rod Johnson's here, and his job, he works for the dairy farmers, and his job is to make that connection. And I think we're seeing more and more every day of how we have to do that because of our lack of doing that in the last 20 years. So this is our consumer. And the next slide goes into what they're demanding of us. And I feel very strongly about these things that I put on here. And I sit on the National Dairy Sustainability Council, and we're looking at these things every day. We're studying, spending a lot of money studying the carbon footprint of a gallon of milk. And as we look at those things, these are the things that we're worried about, okay? And that our consumers are constantly talking to us about. And like I said, I'd love to talk about any one of those things. A clean label is one. Everybody's talking about cleaning up their label. You pick anything up in the grocery store and you can't pronounce half the things that are in it. We had cream on as one of our products that we market. We're probably the only cream, I don't know how far you'd have to go to get real cream today. Okay, if you pick up cream, cream is not cream. It's got emulsifiers in it, and it's got a lot of preservatives in it. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. But it cooks totally different when you go into a chef's, when a chef uses it to cook. Okay, but nobody knows all that stuff that's in cream. So we're trying to figure out ways to bring those chefs a really high quality cream. And I think we found one, and we'll talk about it. So cleaning up the label is very important, and the carbon footprint is very important. That's why local's starting to really make a headway, is because people do the trucking part of it, and the food miles. Food miles are becoming a big hot topic with people as well. So any questions on that? That's what's driving our management team, and what we look at when we talk about different products and different things we're doing on the dairy farm. Okay. Animal care is in there, humanely treated animals. Our consumers are more engaged every day with how we're doing things, how we're treating the animals. We're third-party audited by an outside firm about how we're treating our animals and what we're doing. And in the dairy business, we really a lot of my counterparts worry about that, saying, why should the consumer tell us how to treat our animals and how to produce milk? PrairieLand takes the approach that they're our end consumer, and we have to listen to that end consumer and have a discussion about how we treat our animals, okay? I'm not afraid of a discussion about how I treat if I have a fair shot, okay? About how we produce our products, if they'll sit down and have that dialogue. What I don't want is them to come onto my farm, take videos of some things, take it out of context, and show that on the internet. That's what keeps us up at night, but we're very confident that if we bring a consumer onto our farm and explain why we're doing what we're doing, we can get them to accept our practices. Now, I'm not going to take someone who's a vegetarian and make them a meat lover, no. But at the end of the day, we want them to understand that we do care about our cows, and that we do care about how we take care of the cows, and that they are our livelihood. And we'd be foolish not to treat them with a lot of care. So that's our ultimate goal. So these things, does anybody have any discussion or questions about these? We could talk all day about any one of them, but those are really our driving forces at PrairieLand. I want you to know we're serving a very small market, okay? There's always going to be room for high quality, high quantity food I mean, if there wasn't, Walmart would not be here, right? We got to have cheap food to feed the world, and we're trying to meet a niche of people who are concerned about these types of things. I would say it's about 2% of the population around the United States right now. Depends who you talk to. It's up to 25%. We find that a lot of consumers like to talk this talk, but when they come to buying products, they don't necessarily spend their money that way. So we're real confident that 2% of the population is willing to spend their money and put their money where their mouth is as far as these types of things. And that's the consumer that we're trying to reach, okay? All right, any other questions? Okay, we'll move on here. I'm really passionate about this stuff, so I can talk forever, so we got to keep me going here. And Jacob just did that by switching that slide. So, okay, meeting consumer needs. The two things I like to talk about in the future because I'm a futuristic guy. So these are the two things that we at PrairieLand are working on for the future. A project we're calling Healthy Milk, and another project we're calling a biorefinery. Okay, one's on our meat, on our manure side, and the other is on our milk side. So I'm going to delve into those a little bit more here, and tell you what we're trying to do around these two things. Okay. As we look at a healthier milk, everybody for years has thought milk is milk. I sat down with some ConAgra people here a few months ago and showed them a fatty acid profile of a product that we're producing at our farm. It was just our milk product, but we showed them a fatty acid profile, and if you're not real familiar with that, that's omega-3, 6s, those types of things. And we were real happy, real proud of that milk because we were putting 40% more omega-3s into our milk than the USDA's labeled milk is. But they looked at that and they said, well, omega-3s are great, but I'm really excited about the lower saturated fats you guys have in your milk. That's something we weren't even looking at. So through that we started our Healthy Milk project, and our milk has been changed and is very different than normal milk you would buy off the shelf because we've increased the omega-3s by 40%, we've lowered the saturated fats, and we have A2 casein in our milk. So all those things are great, but to some people probably doesn't make any difference. They want milk as milk. So as we studied the healthy milk, and we're trying to figure out how to get this healthier milk, okay? And what's the process to get the healthier milk? Well, you got to start with healthy cows. And we're trying to feed our cows to be healthier. So when I say it, we have to feed our cows, then we thought, well, that goes back to nutrition. That goes back to our nutrition that we're feeding our cows, goes back to the feed. That goes back to the crops. And how do you get a more nutritious crop? And that's through a healthy soil. So everything we came to the conclusion that everything revolves around the soil, okay? We're all back to soil. And I know nothing about soil science. Actually, the lowest grade I've ever gotten in school was in a soils class. But as I looked at the cow side, which I do know a lot about, I realized it all goes back to the soil. And how can we get the soil more microbial active and built up and have a more nutritious feed for our cows? I'm going to step on some toes when we talk about that, but I'm willing to do that. Go ahead.
You indicated you contract out all your grain.
Yeah.
How do you work with local farmers?
Hence the biggest problem we have. We are working on a campaign to have people raise specific feeds for our cows.
I mean, is that the whole analysis of how you come up with better unsaturated fats?
Yeah, how we feed the cows is correct. Yeah, it's the whole fatty acid profile is what you feed, but what we're really looking at is having a nutritious feed, because some of you guys that feed cattle or ever had milk cows know that you can feed two qualities of hay that are exactly the same. We look at relative feed value on a bale of hay when we buy it. We can buy 2 loads of hay and they'll feed totally different. We can get 5 pounds more or less milk, and Jeff will be able to speak to that. He's a old dairy professor here. But the exact same test will show much different results in the cow. And if you delve into that more, you see it's the sugars and those types of things. Well, how do you get sugars into a alfalfa plant or into the hay itself? Is through the soils. And that's why we go back to the soil all the time. We keep going back to having a healthy soil makes healthy feed and more nutritious feed. A lot of our corns that we're raising today have a very undigestible outer shell, and our cows can't get to the starch. The starch itself is very different in different hybrids and different varieties. So it's my vision that someday I think we're going to see corn raised for ethanol, we're going to see corn raised for livestock a dairy, pigs, because a pig has a much different digestive system than what a cow has. So it's my vision that we're going to see very different feeds raised for very different reasons. One feed that we're using right now is BMR silage, or brown midrib silage. The lignin content in that silage is much less, so it gives our cows the ability to digest that crop a lot better. And we see 5 to 10 pounds more milk from the same pound of feed. And when you're buying feed by the pound, it makes a huge difference to our bottom line. So we have to get specific crops raised for specific animals. And to your point, yeah, we're contracting now a pivot of ground, and we're contracting at a certain price and then having them raise what we want is kind of how we're trying to get around that. Okay, so our soil, when we look at that, we want higher microbial life in our soil. We're building our soils through humified compost. And if you don't know what humified compost is, basically compost on steroids. It's a lot of microbial activity in there, and it's a total different process of making just regular compost, but we're working towards that, and we're excited about using humified compost to build the microbial activity in our soils. When we look at how these soils are treated, and I said I'm talking about stuff I don't have any idea what I'm talking about here, but NP and K is a very small part of our soils, and basically that's what most of us are looking at when we're looking at our soils. We need a balanced soil to raise a balanced crop, and to get those sugars and things in there that we want, we need to have we got to look at more things than just NP and K. The soil structure, and that you get that with a humified compost, and also we get much lower water usage if we can build that soil up. So that's my soils deal, and I don't know much about that. I rely on people who are much smarter than me to figure all that out. Our crops I talked about a little bit. We want high sugar, lower lignin content, balanced feed with lots of vitamins in there. Okay, it's a little bit like drinking a glass of milk compared to drinking pop. Okay, with a glass of milk you get a lot of vitamins and nutrients in there. You can have two feeds the exact same, but you can have a lot different micronutrients. So more nutritious, more digestible. Okay. All right. So we get to the feed part, and that is how we are adjusting our milk and what comes out of our cows, by how we feed them. We listen to our customers. They come to us and say, do you feed any animal byproducts back to your cows? And we used to. And they say, well, is a cow not a vegetarian? Yeah, the good Lord made the cow to eat crops, right? It didn't make a cow to eat other animals, or would have put big insides in their teeth, right? So we stopped feeding other animal byproducts. Does it cost more to do that? Yeah, it does. But our customers are asking us not to do it. We're not doing it. Okay, so then we balance the amino acids. We've got more omega-3s in there, lower saturated fats. The way we're doing that is we've been through a 5 years research on how to adjust those omega-3/6 ratios, and we're seeing great benefits in the cow's health, as well as passing that on through the milk into the milk, so we have that benefit for human health as well. Now, everybody says, well, why aren't you putting it on your label? That's a USDA issue, and it takes a long time and a lot of work and a lot of money to get that done, so we're very slow about doing that, but we are doing that. I said earlier, we don't use any growth hormones or subtherapeutic antibiotics, and that's another thing. The subtherapeutic antibiotics, our customers asked us not to do that, so we stopped doing it. And that's basically just feeding antibiotics at a lower level to prevent any kind of disease, and we won't do that with our cows. So healthy cows, that comes, our goal is longevity in our cows. We have a lot of cows that are 11 years old in our herd, and my challenge to our management team, they all ought to be 11 years old. Okay, so we want longevity, we want a lower culling rate, and breeding efficiency. A dairy cow has to get bred or she doesn't give milk. So it's all about breeding efficiency. That's where the omega-3/6s come into play, and as we've gotten that omega-3/6 ratio right in the cow's diet, she's breeding a whole lot better. So we're real excited about that. And of course, we're always looking to prevent illness as opposed to treat illness. So our vaccinations become very important as well. So, okay, so this is our end product. All those steps, we can do different things to change our end product, and this is our end product, in which we call healthy milk. Our milk is, like I said, 40% higher in omega-3s. We've lowered the saturated fats, and we have A2 protein. I know Abe Bowman was here last month, brought up A2 milk, and I had a lot of questions about it. We're probably not supposed to talk a whole lot about it because that is a patented marketing term, A2, but we can talk about it in the form of the original casein, or the original protein. Let me explain a little bit. All mammals' milk, humans included, is original form of protein was A2. Well, in the dairy breeds, somewhere along the line we started AIing back in the 50s and 60s. One of those bulls had a mutation. It switched the casein in milk from A1, or from A2 to A1. Okay, so everybody says, who cares? Well, I don't really care because I can digest A1. But A1 protein digests very differently in the human body than the A2, the original milk, did. So what happens is, if you have an infant that can't handle cow's milk and you switch them to goat's milk, that's almost always a casein problem, and that's an A1, A2 issue. Because goat's milk is A2. It's the original form of protein. It doesn't have the mutation. About 75% of the milk in the United States has been converted over to A1, and it digests hard, okay? For middle-aged people, it's usually not a big deal. But for infants and older people, it is a big deal. And this is the only country that has that mutation. So a lot of people come from other countries, come to the United States, and they can't drink milk anymore. It's like, well, why? Well, it's because the protein's different. It's a total different kind of protein, digests differently in your body, okay? And Abe was involved with that testing years ago when they originally discovered it. And he got a passion about it. And he came to me and asked me to help him market that, and we did that for a few years, and we had to pay royalties to the A2 Corporation, but it's a very one-on-one discussion. I don't know how you put that in the ad or do a marketing campaign with that. So we did it for about 2 years and said, you know what, this is taking a lot more resources than any of us have to do, so we stopped doing it. And but from PrairieLand Dairy standpoint, we continued testing bulls and choosing bulls that had the original form of protein, which is A2. So we're one of the only herds in the country that are the original form of protein, which is A2. So we get calls every day, or at least every week, for somebody somewhere that wants A2 milk. We can't legally sell it to them, but we tell them to try our milk because we have the original form of casein, and people try it, and hopefully they have a good experience with it. Now, there is a percentage of society that is lactose intolerant. But most of them are self-proclaimed lactose intolerant. They think they're lactose intolerant when actually they're A1, A2 intolerant. So that's the A2 story. Any questions about that, I'd be glad to answer them. But since Abe brought it up, normally I don't really talk about it a whole lot because there is a patent on the marketing of it. But since Abe brought it up, I thought I needed to address that today. So, any questions about any of that stuff? Okay, no artificial ingredients is a big one. Like I talked about earlier, cleaning up the label is very important to some of our customers. So in our chocolate milk, we use regular sugar, and we use all non-artificial cocoa. So it's probably the only chocolate milk you can find around. I think some people are starting to come out with some now, but for a long time we were the only ones that had all natural cocoa in our chocolate milk. So,
do you homogenize your milk?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Homogenization is no more than putting pressure on the milk and breaking up the fat globulins so that they don't float to the top. That's all homogenization is. I'd be glad not to do it, but the consumer did not want to have to shake the bottle, and that's what started all back in the 60s, so we started homogenizing milk again. Doesn't really make any difference to us. It's part of our process, and that's just what we do. So it doesn't, some people do think that affects how the fat is absorbed into your body if it's too small, but we really don't get a whole lot of questions around that. So, any other questions about our milk before we go into manure? Anything? Okay. So, if you have problems drinking milk and you think you're lactose intolerant, try PrairieLand milk. If it works for you, great. Then you're not lactose intolerant. You're A2 intolerant, or you're A1 intolerant, I should say. Okay. My real passion is manure, and you know, some things just come natural, I guess. But we got into the composting of our manure because we had a 60-acre dairy. We all brought our cows together. The original Obink brothers had about 300-400 acres there, and we had all this manure to deal with. So we started separating the solids out, and the solids we started composting. That's how we got into composting. I didn't know anything about it. We started doing it. Then people started coming to pick it up, and we started marketing it. It went very well. So that's how we got into the compost business, and we do all of our solid manure. Then we had some garbage haulers wanted to bring their grass and leaves to the dairy and have us compost them because we had a compost operation. So we did that. We started doing that. That worked out pretty well. It's the perfect business model. They pay us to take it. It's 99% water. We let the water evaporate off, and we have a little grass starts this big and gets down to a little pile, and it's all. They just paid us to take their moisture, and that's okay. So that's a good business model. We like that. So we started expanding that, and like that. And then we had some manufacturers bringing their waste to us as well. Started down that road. And right now we're currently doing some cafeterias, one of them being the Norris School. We're doing a project with them to get to be a zero waste cafeteria, and we're pretty excited about that. And where's the cornboard people? There are a lot of cornboard people. We want to have compostable utensils there one day, so they're looking for a grant. So anyway, there's a lot of people who are coming to us wanting us to take their food manufacturing waste and their cafeteria waste. Now we're considered a CAFO, confined animal feeding operation. We can only take in about 10,000 yards of non-agricultural waste according to our permit. So we started, because of all this interest, we had to turn a lot of these people away. So because of all this interest, we started looking at how we can be a solution for someone like Cargill or a packing plant or somebody like that and bringing in waste. So we started talking to them, started looking at composting permits, and we started working down those roads. And I see Larry's here, and Larry, the county's been great to work with on getting us an expanded. We have to basically be licensed as a landfill to do these types of things. Okay, so in one of our discussions with one of our customers, they said they wanted to bring their waste in, and quite frankly, it stinks really bad. But we thought we could eliminate that by incorporating it really very quickly. But one thing they broadsided me with was foot and mouth disease. Their company has a rule that they will not put anything into compost operation because of foot and mouth disease. If a wild animal comes and grabs a piece of meat or something like that and drags it out, infects the whole area with foot and mouth. So I never thought about that. So that was another obstacle we had to get around. So bottom line is, what we're doing right now is we've teamed up with a company to build a biorefinery in Firth. And we're very excited about it. It's going to be a 2-year process until we get through the permitting and so forth. But we are going to open a biorefinery, first one in the nation, to actually take waste from packing plants, dairies, chicken houses, all kinds of things that we've identified in our area that are biodegradable, that are currently going to the landfill, that we can put into our operation. The way we're doing that, when I say a biorefinery, it starts out with a methane digester. We will collect the gas off of that. Our current program is to scrub that gas and put it into the pipeline as compressed natural gas and sell it to an end user. And actually, one of the end users are working with us on this project. And then the effluent coming out the backside, we're going to pull out the fertilizers, the nitrogen, phosphorus, all the micronutrients, and make them into a usable fertilizer for the area crop farmers and or for the organic fertilizers in Home Depot and places like that, or lawn centers. So that's what our goal is, and our end goal is to have water that can be disposed of into the waters of the state. That's how far we're going to take that water. Okay, the technology is there. The technology is very, very expensive, and capital is a very big issue. We're fortunate enough that we have a contract with a very large capital group that has put the money up to do this project, and we've teamed up with them, and we're very excited about starting this process. So this is the first time I've publicly really talked about it, because we just signed a contract last week, but we have a lot of work to do on it, but this is our concept, and that's where we're going. So we're pretty excited about that. So, okay, what's next? I just want to point out there, 80, depends whose numbers you look at, 80 to 90% of what's going into landfills currently can go through this biorefinery. Okay, so we don't have to build landfills. We can put these biorefineries up, and that's the goal. So, okay, I think I talked about all that already. So, this is what we're going to get out: compressed natural gas, fertilizer, compost, soil amendments, and water. That's the things we're going to get. So, to put it all together, you can see how all those things I've talked about, the healthy milk and the biorefinery, really works together with all around the cow. And when you look at a biorefinery, they have to be on a dairy farm or a beef farm, because they need the dilution. I'll just use an example. Let's say you take a meat packing plant, and the waste they have is extremely high in energy. It's like taking your kid and feeding them Snickers bars as the only diet they have, okay? It's going to be great for a couple days, and then they're going to get sick, right? Well, same thing happens with the bugs in the methane digester. The fats in the stuff that's coming out of a packing plant are very high in energy, and the things that make a lot of gas, but the digester dies about every 30 days, and it takes about 2 months for it to get back up living again. Where if we have the manure from beef farms or dairy farms, it dilutes that stuff. And this thing is no different than a cow. We have to feed it a TMR, a total mixed ration, every day, the same thing every day, because we're feeding those bugs in the digester just like we feed bugs in the room of a cow. So that's why we feel really cool about having the digester on our farm, because they can't just put it in Lincoln or anywhere else. We have to be tied in with the livestock operation. So, so all three of our companies are centered around the cow, and they can't do it without the cow. So it's always been a goal of mine to make more money around the cow than I do with the milk of the cow. So that's what's driving this whole thing. And our goal is to develop a closed-loop, environmental-friendly, sustainable system that will benefit the community and bring healthy food with a low carbon footprint. So.